We are witnessing the full-scale collapse of the Biden COVID narrative. The CDC admits vaccines do not stop transmission. Leftists dance on their neighbors' graves for amusement, and antibody shortages rack the country after Biden admin takes control. Welcome to Old Foundry Media. I'm your host, the Crane Man, somehow still alive in this
winter of severe illness and death.
Let's fire it up. The Biden administration, through the CDC, is finally admitting what anyone with a modicum of intelligence and observation skills has known for quite some time. The vaccines do not prevent you from contracting or transmitting COVID. This is so easily observed by simply looking at professional sports. How are teams that are usually at least 95% vaccinated, sometimes 100% vaccinated, having outbreaks of breakthrough infections? This article from the Millennial confirms it with the headline, CDC states that vaccines no longer prevent transmission. See it from CDC Director Rochelle Walensky's own mouth.
Our vaccines are working exceptionally well, but what they can't do anymore is prevent transmission.
We will be seeing more of that clip in a spicy montage at the end of the video, so stay tuned for that. This, of course, leads one to wonder why Biden continues to call it a pandemic of the unvaccinated. This article reads, I understand that the science says that the vaccines prevent death, but I'm triple vaxxed, still got COVID. You're triple vaxxed, still got COVID. Why is the president still referring to this as a pandemic of the unvaccinated? Fox News' Peter Doocy asked the White House press secretary, Jen Psaki. Well, Peter, I think there's a significant difference, and you just experienced this. Not to expose your public health experience, but I can speak to mine as well. I am triple vaxxed, and I had minor symptoms. There's a huge difference between that and being unvaccinated, Psaki said. To be clear, what is undisputable after this admission is that the risk assumed by not getting a vaccine is risk only assumed to oneself. As the CDC states, the vaccines do not prevent transmission. And this stands in stark contrast to the hegemony's previous narrative, as this video will prove with painful accuracy. Even the CEO of Phizer is admitting this now. This article from CNBC says, Pfizer CEO says 2 COVID vaccine doses aren't enough for Omicron. The 2 doses, they're not enough for Omicron, Pfizer CEO said. Bourla said the 2-dose vaccine does not provide robust protection against infection, and its ability to prevent hospitalization has also declined. He said third shots are providing good protection against death and decent protection against hospitalization. Notice they don't mention protection against transmission or infection. It's not like Pfizer has anything to gain from convincing you to get more of their shots. This article from CNN Business says that Pfizer's adjusted earnings and revenue in 2021 both soared to an increase of over 130% over the previous year. Huh. Who would have thought 10 years ago that the left and Big Pharma would be in bed together? And who would have thought the CDC would be so widely discredited by its own incompetence? I mean, you know when Republican Representative Andy Biggs and CNN chief propagandist Brian Stelter are saying the same thing, there's something out of sorts.
The CDC has turned into a punchline. It is so sad, but it's true. The CDC has turned into a punchline. Watch.
Moving on, I want to reiterate what Director Walensky said. Your vaccine does not mean you cannot be infected. And your vaccine does not mean you cannot transmit COVID to others, vaccinated or not. So what is the justification for medically segregating society again? Especially when it will disproportionately affect black people? It really makes you wonder what the party of the KKK, Jim Crow, the Confederacy, Woodrow Wilson's resegregation of the military, etc., is up to. And what's the justification for celebrating your neighbor's death again? This unrepentantly disgusting article from the LA Times attempts to justify this activity using the absolutely false narrative that the unvaccinated are risky to others while the vaccinated are not. This article by Michael Hiltzik of the LA Times says, on the other, those who have deliberately flouted sober medical advice by refusing a vaccine known to reduce the risk of serious disease from the virus, including the risk to others, and end up in the hospital or the grave, can be viewed as receiving their just desserts. This odious heap of bitterness aimed at his fellow Americans goes on to glorify the subreddit Herman Cain Award, in which leftists celebrate the deaths of their neighbors on a daily basis. The dialogue in the subreddit is largely regurgitations of whatever has been said on MSNBC and CNN. You'll find these people still describing ivermectin as horse paste. You'll find these people still touting the vaccines as a method of stopping COVID transmission and infection. You'll find these people calling the unvaccinated selfish in a stunning display of a lack of any measurable amount of self-reflection, all the while dancing on the graves of Americans they never met. This behavior demonstrates how inclusive and tolerant they really are. Anyone who identifies with the sentiments in this article has been fooled into demonizing their neighbors instead of the people responsible for this disease, and they should be ashamed of themselves. And what's the justification for having fired these healthcare workers in the middle of a pandemic again? The problem of understaffed hospitals isn't new, but the Biden administration knew just how to help. If we would just fire thousands of healthcare workers under the false pretense that the vaccine stops transmission and infection and keeps patients safe, surely this will help with the lack of healthcare workers. This article published January 5th of 2022 details the numbers. I won't read them all, but you can get an idea from a quick few lines. Terminated 440 employees, suspended 204 employees, suspended 145 employees, 70 vaccine-related resignation, and 370 suspended. 36 caregivers, 31 resigned voluntarily, 84 resignations, 250 employees with no vaccination. But wait, there's more.
We're past the point now where we're able to get it directly from any of these companies. The federal government has cornered the entire market. They basically took control of the supply in September. We had done a deal with GlaxoSmithKline on the Sotrovimab, which a lot of people think is the most effective against Omicron, and that is no longer a possibility because the feds have it exclusive.
What is Governor DeSantis talking about? Monoclonal antibodies. Thankfully, one of the most effective treatments for COVID infection is in short supply because the inept Biden administration has taken control of it. As you can see in these news headlines from this week, there are shortages all over. And some people are not happy about the administration's incompetence regarding the availability of these treatments.
Joe Biden has blood on his hands. Why? Because while he's spent the last year forcing vaccine mandates down the throats of Americans, we have terrible antibody shortages that could have saved hundreds, thousands of lives.
In July of 2021, it was considered COVID misinformation to say the vaccine doesn't prevent infection or transmission. When asked about this misinformation, Biden didn't hesitate to use the opportunity to demonize Americans. Working from a now admittedly false information, Biden claimed the unvaccinated were killing people.
They're killing people. I mean, look, the only pandemic we have is among the unvaccinated. And they're killing people.
Perhaps you're saying to yourself, Crane Man, you keep saying they told us the vaccine prevents transmission, and that they used that to justify medical segregation, dancing on their neighbors' graves, firing healthcare workers, and telling you that you're killing people. But where's the proof of that? Well, I'll reply with a montage of video proof, and say this before it plays. Anyone who claims the narrative was always, the vaccines prevent severe illness, not transmission, is either willfully ignorant, lazily unaware, or downright dishonest.
You're okay. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
Our vaccines are working exceptionally well, but what they can't do anymore is prevent transmission. Vaccinated people do not carry the virus, don't get sick. Our vaccines are working exceptionally well, but what they can't do anymore is prevent transmission.
Everyone who takes the vaccine is not just protecting themselves, but reducing their transmission to other people and allowing society to get back to normal.
Our vaccines are working exceptionally well, but what they can't do anymore is prevent transmission.
When people are vaccinated, they can feel safe that they are not going to get infected.
Our vaccines are working exceptionally well, but what they can't do anymore is prevent transmission.
Now we know that the vaccines work well enough that the virus stops with every vaccinated person. A vaccinated person gets exposed to the virus does not infect them. The virus cannot then use that person to go anywhere else. It cannot use a vaccinated person as a host to go get more people.
Our vaccines are working exceptionally well, but what they can't do anymore is prevent transmission.
I'll end with this image that curtly summarizes the narrative shift explained in this video. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. This is the Crane Man, punching out.